Hello and welcome back. We are doing our pop-up literary festival for World Book Day, and I'm joined by Jasmin Perry, who has created a bit of a group as well as her own talents in writing, and the group is called Weston Novel Nights. Kind of sounds cozy. Tell us about Weston Novel Nights.
Yeah, so Weston Writers Nights was really something started in 2019, so a couple of years ago now, and it's really just a place for writers in Weston and North Somerset to get together, talk about writing, of course. We have lots of special guests, so we've had literary agents, authors, publishers, all sorts of people coming to chat about writing, really. So yeah, we talk about lots of different things: how to get a literary agent, how to get your work published, how to write historical fiction or romance or whatever. So yeah, it's a really lovely space. When we can do our events in person, it's nice. There's lots of cake, lots of chat. Currently we're obviously online, which is interesting. But we you know, it's still a lovely environment, and yeah, it's hopefully just a really great space, I guess, for people who are interested in writing or perhaps new to it or whatever, to kind of make some connections and learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah, sounds like such a fun thing to be doing. And it's also, I think, having a support network of people when you're writing is really helpful, because it does feel like a very lonely experience. Have you noticed, this is something that we've sort of been talking about today in many of our talks, some writers felt that with lockdown they were just as creative as ever, and others felt it was a struggle. What kind of came up from your group? Did people find it more of a struggle, more time, less creativity? What happened in lockdown for your team?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, and I think, you know, writing is something that is so personal and so individual that I think everyone has their own experience and everyone has a different experience. But I think at Weston Writers Nights, I mean, we've had people on both sides, like you said, people who are somewhere in the middle, people who are thinking, gosh, I've got no inspiration because I've just been staring at the same four walls every day for the last 4 months. And then other people who have thought, you know, hey, I'm furloughed or I'm working from home, I don't have to commute, I've got all of this extra time and I can crack on with my writing. But whereas before it was like trying to pen it in into 5 minutes in the day. So yeah, I think, you know, there's been both sides of the coin, and I think what's so interesting about that is it just shows how unique a process writing is for people. I think, you know, we often have people come to talk at our events and they might be the type of person that writes 1,000 words every morning, every single day, religiously, or they might be the complete opposite and actually they have to wait for the mood to strike and they might get, you know, loads done or not a lot, or, you know, it really depends for people. And I think that's really come across in the pandemic, that actually writing just looks so different no matter who you are, really.
Absolutely. So tell us about your own writer's journey. When did that start for you?
I am one of those really annoying people that will say, I've always been writing ever since I was a child. But, you know, I've always been a bookworm, always been writing little stories here and then, like ever since I could write, really. So, yeah, it's kind of always been a passion of mine. And then when I graduated from university, I really wanted to sort of take it further. So I decided to do a master's in creative writing at Bath Spa, which I finished in 2020. So that was really great, purely because it gave me a year to think, okay, I don't need to do anything else apart from writing. So I started writing my novel whilst on the course. And since then, I've just kind of developed that further, really. I have an agent for my novel now, so that's kind of in the process of going to publishers and things like that. Still lots of edits, still lots of rewriting to do, but that's really exciting. And yeah, since I graduated, I started submitting my work to different places places. So there's lots of opportunities out there, kind of short story competitions, or people putting together anthologies, or, you know, all sorts of things like that. So I started sending out little bits of my work to kind of all of these places. And of course, you know, out of 100 places that you send your work to, 99 of them say, no, it's not for us. But, you know, I was lucky in that a couple of places picked up my work and printed it, published in anthologies and such. So it's kind of like that, really. I feel like I'm still very much at the beginning of my journey. But I mean, if anyone's watching or listening who's also at the start of their writing career, sending your work out to lots of different places like that is a great thing to do, even if you don't get published in any of them, just for the fact that you get so much feedback when people come back with their rejections or whatever. So yeah, I recommend doing that, and it just helps you build your writing profile, I suppose. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the minute, really.
Who have been your author influences? Who do you love?
That is, I think any book lover will say that is the most difficult question to be asked. But let's see, I think top of the list, someone that always springs to mind for me is Margaret Atwood, and I think so many people will say the same, but I absolutely love her novels, and her book on writing as well is really, really useful. So definitely Margaret Atwood. And then I think for me it's you know, individual novels, I think, really sort of inspire me in different ways, I suppose. So in the last year, what have I read? I've read American Marriage by Tiara Jones, which was a really, really great read. And also The Science of Storytelling as well by Will Storr, which if any of you listening are interested in writing, I definitely recommend it. So yeah, I guess for me, I mean, Margaret Atwood is a standout. And then other than that, it's, you know, books really that stick with you in a particular way, and maybe they resonate particularly with what you're writing or what you're interested in. But yeah,
you might want to rub my elbow or something, because I actually when I had a radio show on LBC, I interviewed Will Storr.
oh really?
Yeah, he used to be a journalist, and he wrote a really incredible book called Will Storr versus the Supernatural.
Right, okay.
And I think that he was probably the one person who was responsible for Most Haunted losing Derek Acorah. So
okay.
because of some journalistic thing that he did. So there's a whole story there. Yes, yeah, that's but yeah, he's a fascinating person to interview. He is an exceptionally good writer as well. He really gets you hooked, and a lot of people do go from journalism into writing other kinds of styles of writing and books. So that's kind of cool.
Definitely. And I think that book in particular, The Science of Storytelling, I think one of the pull quotes on it says that this book feels like a cheat's guide to writing a novel, but it really is that. I mean, you know, I came away from reading it with a whole notebook full of notes, but it's really good if you are looking to write a novel, of kind of breaking everything down and talking about it all in such a easily understandable way. But yeah, I've not read his fiction, but I ought to, because from that book I can tell his novels must be wonderful.
That's brilliant. And so what has been some of your bigger takeaways? So obviously you've managed to meet incredible people who, you know, are helping your group. What are some of the things that you just go, oh my gosh, that is a must-have piece of advice?
Oh, let's think. I think there's lots of different things. I think every person I speak to has at least one tip that I think that is such a golden nugget. And I think it depends. I think something that somebody mentioned to me very early on is to not sort of get bogged down with the pressure of feeling that you have to write every single day if you want to be a writer, because I think that's a piece of advice that is thrown around so often. And actually that's just not accessible for a lot of people. And I think it's really, dangerous almost to be spreading this idea that you must write every day if you want to be a good writer, and it's just not true. So I think that's definitely something that I would say is, if you can't write every day because of your schedule, or actually you've got children or a job or whatever, don't feel like every author is there writing every day at their desk, because they're absolutely not. So that's definitely one piece of advice. And then I think another thing that really stuck with me back when I was doing my MA, I was lucky enough to be taught by Nikesh Shukla, who is the editor of The Good Immigrant, and he's just written Brown Baby and many other amazing novels. But he kind of said to me, I think he'd asked me what my job was, or what I did, who I was, and at the time I was an estate agent. So I said, oh, I'm an estate agent. And he said, no, Jasmin, you're a writer. And I think that's really important, because I think when it comes to writing, it's sometimes we don't feel like we don't have the permission to call ourselves a writer, say this is who I am. But I think that's definitely something that stuck with me, is if you ever pick up your pen and you ever write a story, or you ever write anything at all, you are a writer, and you should feel able to say that about yourself. And I think that's a really empowering thing that's kind of stuck with me as well, because it gives you so much more confidence then when you think, no, I'm not an estate agent, I'm a writer. So yeah, definitely that.
And that is a really big deal. So I've authored and published 5 books. So I've got 3 different publishers, and people would say to me, oh, you're an author. And I'd think, no, because an author makes a living from writing. And I'd done it. And my friend said, no, an author writes a published book. And I was like, yes, but I also have other work that I do. And she said, it doesn't matter that you've got other work. It's the minute and it's like you say, you're a writer if you're picking up a pen and writing is a regular habit. And you're an author the minute you've finished a book, whether or not it's published, self-published, you've got it out there. But it's funny, isn't it, how archetypally we don't necessarily see ourselves as being something. And I know whenever I'm interviewed and somebody kind of goes, author, speaker, but oh, hello.
Me.
It's like, no, I'm nothing without the costume. I don't have a costume. And talking of costumes, actually, I think that this is also quite an interesting tip, which is that sense of imposter syndrome can be really tricky when you actually sit down to write and you can go, I'm just wasting time here. Who do I think I am? And maybe some of the negative responses you had at school kind of like come up. I created the writer jacket. So I would put this jacket on when I was going to write, because it was kind of like putting on the character of an author. So it's like, I'm putting on my author and sitting down to write. I don't know why she had to have a posh voice, but she definitely did. But definitely didn't write like that. Didn't want. But just putting sort of that place, oops, my thing's all ticking, but putting something into that place where you kind of feel like, yes, I have permission. I'm giving myself permission to be bigger than who I think I am, because I do think a lot of people really get stuck on this idea of who do I think I am to tell the world anything. So how have you got over that in your own writing, to sort of say, who do I think I am? Or didn't you have that as a problem? You were blessed.
I was definitely not blessed. No, I know completely what you mean. It's every time you sit down and you've got that blank piece of paper in front of you, or your Word document, and instead of your story coming out, it's all the thoughts coming into your head. Why am I writing this? This sentence I've just written is terrible. Who's going to read it? It's never ending. And it is that imposter syndrome, and I think it is so closely linked with giving yourself the permission to write. I think it's one of those things. I think some people have the opinion, oh well, if you're writing, you clearly think that what you have to say is so important. But I think just reframing that and thinking, no, actually, it's up to somebody else whether they read it or not, but I'm writing for me, and I'm putting this down on paper for me, even if I'm the only person that's going to read it. And that way, I think helps. And I think for me, usually in writing fiction or like my novel is fantasy. So that helps as well, because I guess I don't have that of thinking, oh, who's going to read about my life or anything. I'm just, in my mind, I suppose it's framed as I'm creating a story, I'm creating a world, and if anybody wants to read it, that's up to them, so I try to kind of hold all of that, lock all of those thoughts outside the room before I start. But I think although it's, probably not the most profound tip, but I mean, it's every writer's night event that we do a writing exercise. So everyone comes along, we'll write something. And I always say, look, we're going to set a timer for 5 minutes or, 2 minutes, however long it is, and just pick up your pen and just write constantly. Don't even worry about it making grammatical sense, or if you're writing the same word, or if it's silly, or just put the words down. And I think that's a really important thing to do. And I do that even just, writing novels or whatever, is to leave the editor and to leave the self-consciousness outside of the room and just forget about it. In that moment that you're writing, all you're doing and all you need to think about is the words that you're putting down on the page. And you can deal with the imposter syndrome and the editing and all of that later. But I think that's the important thing to do, is just create a space for yourself, mentally and physically, if it's helpful, where you can just be creative and it doesn't matter. No one's looking over your shoulder. So it's your space. You can write whatever you like, really. But yeah, that's that's my mindset, I suppose, when it comes to it.
It's a very good mindset. So if anyone wants to join the group, and I apologise for getting the name wrong in the beginning. So
no,
Writers Nights.
Yes.
How will people find you to be able to join the group?
So we have our Facebook page. We post pretty much everything on there, as everyone does. So that's just Weston Writers Nights. We also have our website, which is Weston Writers Nights as well. So yeah, any events that we're doing, we have a printed magazine as well. So twice a year we have publication opportunities through that. That's all posted about on our Facebook page and our website as well. So those are probably the best places to keep up to date. And then, we've got a newsletter as well. So whatever works for people, I suppose.
That's brilliant. Jasmin, thank you so much. Lovely and absolute pleasure to talk to you. And good luck with the book.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for having me. It's lovely to chat.